Hello, everyone. Oh, yes, it is that time of the week. It is Wednesday morning. It is time for Small Biz Talk. Yes, I'm leaning into my Ed McMahon voice, but guys, when we have our pre-production meetings, I'm telling you, I'm loving Lori's energy, our guest for today. Oh, you're in for a treat. Anywho, if this is your first time joining us, hello, my name is Sadie Reben. I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicating to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Lori, I'm excited. How about you?
I am too. This is going to be a awesome show. It's for you guys specifically. I am going to get started immediately. I want to allocate as much time as possible to this guest. So no further ado, I am going to get my stuff out of the way so we can get going. Oh my God, it's the end of July almost. So my calendar is going to tell you what's going to go on in August already. So next week we've got a show that was taped with Ashley Arnold of Lady Cakes. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. It was an excellent show that talked about creativity, innovation, getting permits, and finance, the importance of being profitable. You know, one of my favorite topics. So I had to bring this show back. Now, in August, we have Katie Schoen. I haven't talked with her. I'm not sure if that's the right pronouncing of her name, so I might be saying it wrong, but it's the Activist Kitchen. You're going to love this story. On the next week, we're going to have Adam Chapman come back on. He's called the Pitchinator. He'll tell us what's happening in the funding world, all kinds of exciting things. We always have great discussions. The last week in August, David Ronaldo from College Zoom. He has been on the show a couple times, and he is, let's call, a seasoned entrepreneur. And once again, I'm bringing somebody back on the show that's been through the twists and turns, and he's going to talk about how he had to keep innovating, making changes, manage and monitor sales, employees, hiring, letting go, layoffs, the whole 9 yards. So you can kind of see the trajectory of what happens and how you kind of never can let off the pulse. Everything is always changing. So he's going to be great to kind of give you a whole picture of the entire world of entrepreneurship, of running a small company. Very excited to have him back on the show. And so today, for Lori's Corner, this is the topic. Not all sales are good sales. Okay, guys, here we go. So this is Lori's Corner, you know, where I do my rant and rage for the day. So today, during the show, like I said, we're going to be talking about sales. So I want to start with something important. Not all sales are good sales. Too many small business owners are out there selling to whoever will buy from them. Okay, you buy from me, good. Here we go. Without stopping to ask whether that sale is actually profitable. You can grow revenue, bring in more customers, and still not have enough left at the end of the month to pay yourself or reinvest in the company. You hear me say it all the time, guys. That's not a winning strategy. It's not. Broke is not good, okay? That's just busy work. So think about it this way. If you worked in sales for a bigger company, they would never let you sell below a healthy margin. Never. Anybody who's been in sales, you can tell me in the chat, you know this is true. They might allow a discount, but it would be from a built-in profit cushion, okay? When you're a small business owner, it's easy to give a discount just to close the deal, and suddenly you're breaking even. Or more so, I even see losing money on that job. This is why every small business owner needs at least a basic level of sales skills. not to be a pushy salesperson, but to become a good steward for your company. You need to learn how to find and attract the right clients, the ones who value what you do, pay for what you're worth, and fit your business model. So here's the bottom line, guys. Stop chasing every sale. Start chasing the ones that actually move your business forward. We have a great sales trainer on the show today who's going to share practical ways to do exactly that, how to organize your time, improve your sales process, and start selling smarter instead of just harder. You got this. Make every sale count. Okay, let's jump into the show. So today I'm very excited to have Meegan Johnson, the founder and CEO of Stratavera, a consulting firm that helps small business owners turn messy, stressful selling into clear, repeatable systems for growth. Meegan's a seasoned sales leader who's been in the thick of it, selling services, building teams, and figuring things out the hard way. With 25 years of experience growing businesses of all sizes, she knows what actually works and what's just noise. Every small business owner is essentially their own salesperson. Meegan, I am so excited to have you on the show today.
It's so wonderful to be here.
Okay, so first of all, I have to say that last time when you were on the show with my intent to interview you about your company, everybody kept asking sales questions. This is why, guys, I was like, Meegan, you got to come on and talk to us about sales. But first of all, please tell us about your company, tell us about your history, give us the rundown.
Sure. Well, number one, thanks for having me again. I had such a wonderful time last time, and I love it when people ask questions about sales. So that's my favorite soapbox. And thank you for the great introduction. I mean, you summed a lot of it up. Stratavera is my company. I am a sales consultant, and I work with generally small business owners to help demystify and take a lot of the fear out of the sales process because most of us are great at something. We start a business because we're great about something that we love doing and we feel good about, and then we hang up our shingle and we're like, oh, I have to do all of this back end stuff of running the
Yeah,
business, but I've also got to go out there and pitch myself constantly to everyone who will listen. And I think that can be a scary thing. Most of us were raised not to talk to strangers, and most of us were raised that conversations over money and budgets are rude. And so we tend to shy away from some of those things. And it's not easy just kind of putting yourself and your passion out there because, as you said, you are your best salesperson and sometimes your only salesperson. So I love working with business owners to put a process in place that we can follow to look at things like, what services, what products actually are profitable, and how do we sell more of those? And how do we have fun with some of the sales process? Because you can get a lot of enjoyment out of networking and selling and all of those types of things if you feel confident doing it. So I'm here to help
yeah.
make people more confident and get them organized when it comes to that so they can make money.
Yeah, I love that. We're going to start out by, I'm going to go back and sometimes I tell my history. And as people have watched the show over time periods, they keep learning more and more. But many people know that my humble beginnings in business was a salesperson. That's how I started out. I was a salesperson. So when I was 25 and started my own marketing company, I also did sales trainings. I mean, just a few years ago, right? Well, I remember this really probably dumb thing, it was a long time ago, but this thing I would always start out by saying when I was doing the sales training, because I was always training to people that didn't want to sell at all. And I would tell them this story. I'm going to tell a story and I'm going to pass it to you to talk about mindset and beliefs. I would say, and it's really corny. Okay. It's really corny, but I'm going to tell you. So I would go to the audience.
Corny's good.
I know it was really corny. I go, okay, everybody like ice cream? And most people would raise their hand. I go, this people like chocolate ice cream? And only a few people would raise their hand, right? And I go, well, if someone doesn't like chocolate ice cream, does that mean chocolate ice cream's bad? Does that mean chocolate ice cream has no right to be in existence? No, you just like chocolate ice cream. So if you try to sell your product and somebody says, I'm not interested, and they really are not, they just don't like chocolate ice cream. Find someone else who does. I was trying to change a mindset. So, Meegan, take it from there.
Uh, you're 100% accurate. I think, one of the biggest fears people have about positioning themselves, pitching themselves, selling themselves or their product, call it whatever you want, right? About putting themselves out there and saying, hey, buy my thing or buy what I do, right? Buy my expertise is fear of rejection, right?
Yeah.
We're just all kind of pre-programmed to take no very personally. And the reality is I mean, the chocolate ice cream analogy is completely apt. There's all kinds of ways to look at a prospective client, especially if they say no, right? The timing could be off. Sometimes no just means not right now, right? Um, and you're right. You could be selling chocolate and they only like vanilla, so they're just not the right fit for you. One of the things that we talk about a lot, in sales, and I'll try not to get too much into alphabet soup, but an ICP, that is an ideal client profile. And most of the time when we start our business, like you said, we're taking all comers. We're trying to sell to anyone who will pay us. But the reality is if we sit down and kind of go, what is my ideal client? Do they fit this profile from, do they have a need? Are they in pain? Do they have the right type of budget? Do they like chocolate ice cream? Those types of things. Then, if we kind of put it through that filter, I think it becomes a little less about rejection and really a little bit more about, is this a logical fit for the business? Because a sale is really, you know, it's two parties going, does this make sense, right? You can't force anybody to buy anything, and they can't force you to provide them with services or a product. It's an exchange, right? And
Yeah.
it's a partnership exchange. And I think if we look at it that way, as opposed to they don't like me because they said no, right? You're not asking them out on a date. And also, just like dating, there's a bazillion fish in the sea. There are tons of clients out there. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. I mean, wine, I think, is a great example. Every time you look at the shelves, there's a new wine out.
Yeah.
And so there's not really a scarcity thing there. And I think that's another thing that we sometimes get into this habit of, like, there's only so many business or there's only so many clients or things like that. And it's like, that's not really the case. If they're not the right fit for you, oftentimes it's not about you, it's about them and their need, or they don't like that flavor. And you just move on to the next one that makes more sense.
I love what you spoke about, and I want to talk about the ICP a little bit more in depth. When I look at, a lot of people do these business plans, and I've been reading them for years, especially as a professor at USC and Pepperdine. And you would read these business plans from a small business, and they go, well, it's $1 billion industry. I'm like, so what? That doesn't really affect you at all, and it doesn't justify your existence. And they act as if they need to capture the same number of clients and revenue like these big corporations. And I always tell people, you maybe need 15, maybe 10, maybe 5, maybe 100, maybe 1,000 or 2,000, but you don't need that many clients to that degree. You can be more choosy. And I always say you end up firing your first clients because you realize later you can't do business with them. So going back to this ICP, this is a very known thing when you're dealing with, larger companies, and they identify their ideal client. And I think that small businesses are exposed to this and they think about it, but they think about it from a marketing perspective only. And
Right.
in larger companies, there's financial criteria, there's marketing criteria, there's client acquisition, there's, I'm going to call it low hanging fruit. We use that expression a lot. So
Yep.
without, getting in too much of the weeds, but information that our small business owners could take away today, and they could say, okay, after this show, when I have my coffee or lunch, I'm going to write ICP at the top of this paper, and I'm going to start taking some notes and rethink my strategy. Let's delve into the ICP. I think that's a very good place to start as it refers to our audience.
Yeah, because everything kind of flows from there in terms of
Yeah.
if the services match the profile, if they're profitable, those types of things. And you bring up a really good point. I think when you're a small business owner, a lot of the information out there surrounding sales is either set up for really large organizations, right? Or, you get a lot of these days you get a lot of goofy stuff, I feel like, on the internet, where it's just some muscle bound guy on a street in Beverly Hills going, "You're gonna make $1 million if you pay five bucks for my program," rah. And it's all very either super flashy, like crazy, buy my stuff, right? Or it's very technical and very sophisticated. And that is super hype talk. I love that. Yes, thank you in the comments. 100%. I lo- I get so many of those in my feed, and I amusingly love watching them because I'm just like, bro, take it down a notch. Anyways, but so when you're looking for information, you're like, okay, well, I'm not a Fortune 100 and
Yeah.
I'm not this guy. So, what actually makes sense? And there's a lot of things if we break away the scary words like sales, right? Because it's just a scary word. We've all had bad sales experiences, and I think that's where our mind goes. If we take away all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, our ideal client profile, like if you wrote ICP at the top of the page and started listing things out, and I do think it is an easy exercise. Let's start with, what problem do they have that you solve, right? So, I'm a plumber. My ideal client has either broken pipes, or maybe if I do, new construction, they're building a bunch of new houses and they need the plumbing for that. Or they've got an old house and they need to replace the plumbing, right? These are the problems they have. These are how I solve them, right? But then I ask myself other questions. In order to solve those problems, what type of budget do they have to have, right? What type of timing do they have to have? Obviously, if it's a burst pipe, that's chances are that's an emergency. But if it's they're building a house, what's the time frame to deliver that, right? So things like timing, do they have a budget, what their problem is and how do you solve it? um, and because here's the thing, if they are building a new house and they want all the pipes but their budget is $100, that's not a client, right? Or even
Right.
$500. You can't.
Right.
You have to know what your services, and we'll talk more about that, or your goods cost, right? To kind of go, they need to have this amount of budget to make sense to be my client, right?
Right.
Um, they need to have expectations in this type of time frame for me to get the job done. We all know you can't plumb a whole new house in a day, right? Those types of things. And then the other question I'd usually ask is, what motivates them to buy from me specifically, right? In plumbing or construction, that might be things like trust being important, right? Like, what are their soft buying motivations? And then things like, where do I find them, right? Because if you have kind of that profile, that helps you create your plan of, okay, that means, my costs have to fit in this in order to make this product profitable. Or this is where I go to find prospective clients, right? Like if I'm a plumber that likes to put pipes in new houses, then maybe I'm going and networking with real estate agents or real estate developers, right? So that you kind of work backwards from what is the perfect client, right? And then, how am I selling to them? That's how you kind of come up with your game plan. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I've been taking notes, like, because I got so many different places that I want to go. So I'm just going to like pick one off the list. I'm going to tie two thoughts together. There is always this adage that you had when you were working in sales for a corporation, because you could get away with this, and it was part of the strategy, is you throw enough spaghetti against the wall and you see what sticks. You cannot do that in a small company, because usually the salesperson is the same person that is owning the company and has to do everything else. So time is a very limited resource, and budget, marketing budget, sales budgets, these are very limited. So you really have to have a laser focus on where you're investing your time and money. And you you had mentioned in the situation with the plumber about maybe it's real estate advisors or real estate agents that you go to, which we call influencers a lot, right? So there is the question of a strategy in this. What we're really talking about is a specific strategy with a complete respect that time and money is not readily available, and then a mechanism to see if your strategies work and determining, is it an influencer? Is it a direct to client? Is it a little bit of both?
Mhm.
It's I'm opening a big can of worms here because I'm going through the whole strategy, but I think it ties into and follows up immediately after the ICP in how do you find them?
100%, because your ideal client profile starts to determine your process and your strategy. It's, let's say, kind of going back to that plumbing example, if I only want to work direct to consumer, right? That's and fix broken pipes, or they've got an old house and need it replaced. If I only want to do that, my ideal client profile excludes new construction, right? But if I determine, well, gee, new construction is very profitable for my business because while it may be labor intensive, it's not a mess. Like, I'm not going in cleaning up bad work or whatever, that's actually more worth my time. Then I might go, gee, getting in front of those influencers, those people that can put me in front of real estate developers or things like that, like joining in a real estate development association might be more worth my time because I want to sell to more of that ICP, right? And so you're absolutely right. That profile determines where you're going to spend your time. And I just want to comment on when you mentioned laser focused. You're absolutely right. When you're a salesperson for a big company or your business development manager, call it whatever title you want, that is your sole job. That's all you do all day. So you do have a lot more bandwidth to throw spaghetti around, right? But when you're a business owner and you are doing all of the jobs, all of the hats, I am the salesperson, I am the executor of the work, I am, your time spent selling and marketing has to make sense. It's kind of like you can't just show up at, say, like a chamber event or something like that, really without a plan. I mean, technically you can, but you have to look at it as it took me 20 minutes to drive here in traffic, or 30 minutes.
Right.
Hey, I'm in South Los Angeles, right? It takes an hour to get anywhere. Um, I spent that drive time. Now I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to spend that time. What's my plan when I walk in the door, right? And that's the kind of thing where I say, have a plan for networking, have a plan for marketing. And again, all of that stems from your ICP, and then you kind of come up with your profitable product makeup, kind of going back to what you were saying about which services or goods actually make sense. So we sell more of those. Um, and then, yeah, how am I gonna execute my time against that?
Yeah.
Can I throw one other thing out there about time
Please,
tracking?
please. Yes, please.
Okay, so um, that's one of the hardest things. Like when you run a business, you're busy. No one wants to clock in and out. Like the last time I clocked in and out before I started my company, I think I was 16 or 17 years old, right? Because I started my career in retail clothing. And but once I started my business, I do clock myself in and out.
Yes.
I have a free app that I use on my phone. There's a bunch of them out there. I use Clockify, but I have clients in there. And then I also have my own activities like networking time, drive time, because I want to kind of get a good gauge that isn't my gut and keep myself true to, uh, to my service model, right? So I do suggest stuff like that for people because it when when you actually do that level of detail, it helps you identify if a client is profitable, if a product is profitable, and if the time you're spending, say, on sales activities, for example, is actually making you money.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because that's a big thing. I get everybody to start clocking in and doing timesheets when I start looking at the profitability. So I absolutely love that because that's something I say, if you don't manage it, you're not monitoring it. Time is that resource. Now, Brenda asked, is Clockify a free app or do you pay for it? Let's go in on that.
There's two versions. I just use the free one. So the free version allows you to clock yourself in and out either by the actual time or in blocks of time. And it does allow you to create like project levels and tasks. So, for example, I have different clients at the project level, and I'll go in and go, I just spent 2 hours of work on this client. And then 2 days later, I'll do the same thing. You also can create like tasks. So I have things like networking versus admin time versus actual client or prospect meeting time. That free version allows me to do all that. The paid version, it just allows you to do a lot more, right? You can run a lot more analysis. I think you can market by what of your time is billable versus non-billable, which is really nice.
No, that's my big deal too.
Well, they used to have that in the free version. You used to be able to mark, and then I think they locked it out of that, and now you have to pay for that. So I may actually have to start paying, and
Yeah.
I think it's actually relatively inexpensive, but I still get a lot done with the free version in terms of keeping myself honest to where I'm spending my time. So
I love that. Well, like I said, I do it all the time. And I have people tell me, oh, they get X an hour. Then they go on timesheets for even like a week and they realize they're under minimum wage. That is so key.
right.
Okay, this is an interesting place we're going to go next. And hopefully I'll get this out correctly so you'll see where I'm going because it kind of goes in a circle, but it comes back to the same question. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is in actuality, 99% of our companies, whether they're selling a product they created or not, are really distributors because they're paying for somebody to manufacture, they're paying somebody to warehouse, they're paying somebody. So what I'm finding is the people that are supporting the businesses are making money, but the businesses are only getting pennies on a product, a pennies, because literally they say my overhead's nothing. I'm working on my home. What they don't realize is their cost of goods is their outsourced money, and it's huge, right? So I've been thinking about how because this margins are so small and every single time they sell more, they stay about the same because nobody's getting that big of a volume discount. How do you eventually get to profitability? This was in the back of my mind. Now I'll tell you where I'm going with the question.
Hmm.
Many years ago, when social media became a marketing tool, I remember in the marketing media discussions, made more attention to it 20 years ago than I do now. There was this, well, can you just do it social media? No, you got to have a bit of traditional sales too. And there was this argument, and I don't follow it, but I think it still stays today, right? So there's one-on-one selling, there's marketing, there's social media moves, right? And then there's things like networking, which I love if they're feasible for the business model because I call them the big net, one activity, a big net, and you get a bunch of referrals. There's all these different strategies. I'm going to ask you a twofold question, and I honestly don't know the answer. I don't know if just social media alone will work for everybody, anybody, nobody. I know there's been this belief from the clients that all they got to do is a few blog posts, but I hear some people build their business off Instagram, but I hear more the dude on YouTube saying he did rather than my clients. I'm not seeing the results one on one.
Right.
So I think what we're talking about is the activity mix and the belief that social media may be it all or maybe it is it all. But I find that so many are blindly relying on one source of activity to their default and then believing when it isn't getting enough of the right clients or enough clients that it is about the business when it could be about the activity.
Right. I think you're completely accurate. It kind of the reliance on one thing, I think, goes a lot back to mindset, right? We tend to rely on what we're comfortable with, and some of
Yeah.
these other things like networking or, you know, if if you're like me and you're really comfortable networking, I need to do more on social media, right? But if you're not comfortable networking, you're going to lean on social media or paid advertising or other things like that. But from a sales perspective, right? You need to have more than one business development channel is kind of what we call it,
Right.
right? So,
Like that.
and that's not always easy to juggle because all these things take time. Social media posting takes time, or if you're outsourcing that to someone, which is ideal, but that takes money, right?
Yeah.
Networking takes time. It all takes time and money, and we know that. But even if you're only relying on one thing right now, like social media, if you can just incorporate, a one networking event a month, and then of course the follow up with the people that the meet
Right.
that might be worthwhile,
Oh, yeah.
right? Just something like that. I think it allows you to do a couple of things. One, you're diversifying your sales strategy, and you want that. because different types of clients, different reach, so many things happen when you open up different, sales channels, number one. And then, I lost my train of thought. I forgot number two, but kind of going back to what we were saying, I think that when we rely solely on like social media, for example, and of course, all of this is relative to what your product or your service
Right.
is, but social media is very noisy right now. It's very crowded and it's only getting more so. I mean, I love AI for everything it does for me from a efficiency perspective, but it's made selling online, be it on LinkedIn, be it on Instagram, anything else, there's just, it opened up the floodgates. And for you to actually get real attention from a real buyer on social media, I think is harder than it's been in the past
I do
because
too. I do too. Yeah.
there's just so much noise. And how are you differentiating yourself from all of that noise? And then it does beg the other question with social media. Are people just doom scrolling or are they actually looking to purchase?
Yeah.
I look at myself as an example. As a consultant, I know some consultants that have built their business online, but I'm usually getting referred by someone who knows a business owner that's struggling with sales.
Yeah.
I can't just pick up the phone and call a CEO and go, "Hey, do your sales suck? You want to hire me?" Like it just, I guess I could post that online. Like, are you
Yeah.
scared to sell? Hire me. But I can post education um,
Right.
for the that helps position me as an expert and things like that. So people might consider doing that, but when I do those things, um, I don't always like I feel like if I get business from it, yay, right? But it's not my only sales channel. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. In fact, there is a area I want to go, and we'll go there in a minute. But something you said struck me, and I'm not trying to make it. We can make a whole show out of this, so I'm not trying to.
no, right.
But going back to relying on social media, I have had now from several clients experiences. Not only have I heard it in the marketplace, but I had several clients experiences where AI is changing the way people are getting information about the products and services they purchase. So I had somebody that was really ranking high on social media and, the list for a long period of time, like good, decade. And that was their sales coming in. But suddenly, what happens is AI, and I'm not an expert on this, Megan, I don't intend to be, but it appears to me that it goes for places that are giving more information because people aren't saying, show me a product. They're saying, let me just say a sneaker. It's the only thing that comes to mind. They used to say, I want this product in a black sneaker. They might say, I'm running and my arch hurts. What is the best sneakers for this? So AI goes, it doesn't have a preference. It's not an emotion. It doesn't have a, paid for the most part. Instead, it looks at people who wrote articles about sneakers and arches, and then it pulls up that product choice.
Yeah, tell
So
me about instead of
yes,
show me black sneakers, tell
yes,
tell me about which black sneakers are best for running or which
yeah.
black sneakers are best for whatever or which black sneakers are in fashion right this minute, right?
Yeah.
And
And
I
so
think
it
you're
goes
right.
back to remember when websites first started out were ancient. We remember that. It was all about you had to have information on your website to get Google ranking. Now that kind of fell to the wayside, but I'm almost seeing, and I'm not an expert in this field. I'm just talking, from what I see, but I'm seeing it kind of going back where information and education seems to become important again. And it especially helps with the noise.
Yes. Well, and again, in a sea of now everybody online and AI generated images, like,
Yeah.
there could be a million Meegan lookalikes that are AI generated talking about selling, right? Position education helps you position yourself as an expert and it actually shows authenticity. And, what I hear a lot of when it comes to marketing, yes, we all have to be online, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying like never be on social media and don't waste your time. But what I'm saying is we do have to position ourselves differently. I feel like there is this pendulum swing to, how people's habits in terms of how we're getting found. Like we all kind of have to look at our websites and look at our presence online through a different lens. But authenticity is becoming, so relevant because you can
Yeah.
put up a way more polished perfect version of me doing sales stuff and people kind of automatically know that it's fake, they might listen to the information, but I think we start craving more flaws when everything becomes so perfect, right? And
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
trust thing. And trust is key in sales. Like that is why often a fan of networking and things like that. If someone refers someone to you, you know, chances are your deal is half closed because if Lori told me to work with this accountant, I know Lori, I trust Lori. Yeah, I'm 50% of the way already to basically they just have to not screw it up, right? Like
And I think trust is coming back in vogue, if I can say it. I feel, I mean, maybe I'm only prescribing for my own biography. Maybe that's so.
maybe our Gen
But
X is showing.
yeah, maybe my Gen X is showing. Oh my God, that sounds so good. I'm
Possible.
62 and my Gen X is showing. I love that. But
Possible.
I've gotten where trust is like such a big deal with me because I feel like I can't tell what's real anymore. And I'm not opposed to any of this. I love all this world. I'm having a blast in this new weird world. But I'm just saying it's like you want to filter through it. Okay, I got an
Yeah.
interesting place to go next. It's just a little sliver of something. Okay. I'm going to call it, you ready? I'm going to call this one the undiscovered and not considered pathway. Okay,
Okay.
that makes you curious already,
I
right?
like that.
Okay, I this is something I think people don't think about, and it's not for everyone, but I think it has some validity, and you can agree, disagree, or what have you. And that is that sometimes your competitors and your vendors and other people within your circle can actually be your referral sources and your partners. And I find, and I've been talking about this for like 30, 40 years, that when small businesses partner, they can bring resources together. And so in the banking industry, it's big. Your fellow banker is not a competitor. You're swapping deals based on the bank appetite constantly. And I've seen it where you can go to your vendors and say, hey, are there any customers that are, and what are the customers asking for? So I think that these in your chain, other than just, can you do this for me, vendor, and you're a bad competitor, I don't like you, I think they can be sometimes our best resources and they're not considered at all. And in big business, they are. They are
Yes.
partners in there. And then big businesses stand up and go, our competitors, and they give small businesses this Wizard of Oz belief, like they look at them as enemies and resources, when behind the scenes, you and I know, because we live in that world, they're friggin' partnering and sitting and having dinner with them. Can we
Yep.
talk about that for just a second? Because
Oh
I think
gosh,
that's an
absolutely.
important thing.
Well, here's a great example, right? In big business, um, you're so close and usually well networked worked with your competitors that if you're in, say, a Fortune 150, as a salesperson, you usually have to take antitrust and anti-price fixing classes because they
Yeah.
know you talk to your competitors. You're talking to other salespeople in the field. You're not supposed to agree to not discount below each other's rates. That's actually, technically against the law for like big publicly traded companies. But you're going to the same events. You're swimming in the same pool. So when you're with a big company, you do recognize that sometimes you're working alongside a competitor or near a competitor, sometimes with a competitor. I've had situations when I was in the staffing world where a client is so big, they need so many people that, yes, you are coordinating with your competitors to fill 400 positions, right? Because you can't fill them all yourself as a company. So yeah, in the big business world, I think there's more recognition of that. In small business, it is often overlooked. And technically, you can almost call that another business development channel. Like
Yes.
a great example, attorneys, I think, really are a great example of that.
Yes.
Attorneys network with other attorneys. They know other attorneys like you wouldn't believe. That's where they get the majority of their businesses from each other. Sometimes it's because they're in different legal fields, like say an estate attorney and a real estate attorney, or an estate attorney and uh, a family life attorney, family law attorney, right? But you will see two family law attorneys refer to each other all the time because they might go, I don't have the bandwidth right now. I've got too many people, too many clients on my plate, too many court cases coming up. I'm not the right personality fit for this client. There's so many reasons that you might work with a competitor. And also a rising tide floats all boats. Again, if we get out of kind of the there's not enough business to go around mentality, like as long as they're printing money, somebody's spending it. The question is always just who, right?
Yeah, I love
So
that.
working with your competitors, I think is really important. Influencers, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
but also, I hear it referred to sometimes as power partners, right? Um,
Oh,
a real estate attorney and a property and casualty insurance broker, right? Someone who sells house insurance, they go hand in hand, right?
I
Uh,
love that.
a
Power
real estate,
partner.
yeah,
Yeah.
power partners. Like think about who do you currently know that you already have a relationship with that is a power partner where you could refer business back and forth. If you're in construction, any other related or HVAC or plumbing or roofing, any other related trade is potentially a power partner. So are
Yeah.
real estate agents, so are real estate attorneys,
Yeah.
so are
You
insurance
know,
brokers,
yeah,
right?
do that when I got into banking, and I went into banking literally after my MBA because I wanted the inside scoop on how banks looked at financials. I had a motive, I had an intent. It was a short-term thing for me. I wanted the context, I wanted the relationships. I knew exactly what I was going for. My entire existence in sales, because banking is selling, you're selling money, right?
Absolutely.
Had been directed, call people direct. So I thought I was contacting the clients that wanted to borrow the money. And I kept getting the acronym ABC. No, Lori, you go to the ABC. I'm like, what in the world is the ABCs? Meegan, it was attorneys, bankers, and CPAs. He
Yep.
said because they know the company needs money and they're also looking, and then also a bank may want to swap. So all of the meetings they called ABC, and that's all we did. And that's where the banking industry is kind of, I won't put a word to it, but it's about sitting in really expensive restaurants with fellow, you know what I mean, and having
Yeah.
dinner and having lunch. I was told that I should never,
Courtside tickets
ever,
and all that good stuff.
yeah, I was told never eat alone. You need to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with somebody from the ABC. And after a while, I was like, these are friggin' boring people.
Yes. And
A
that's
whole other
yeah.
story.
If
Yeah, but
I have spent
it's to your
portions of
point.
my career where that's all I do all day, and sometimes I love it, and sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
But it's to your point. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm bringing up these weird things, and I want to leave enough time for structure and organization and
I know
managing.
we have to
But
circle back, right?
yeah, we
We
got
were
to circle
talking
back
about
on that.
products.
But here's another thing I think that is not possible for everyone, but more possible than they see. And I calling it technically debundling because that's what it is. So sometimes let's talk about the client that doesn't want to pay for the full services
Hmm.
and then people discount. Instead, debundle. Say, okay, well, you can get this and this, or you can get this. Instead of reduction of your profit, debundle your service. Services are so lovely to be debundled. You can debundle them all day long, but you can also then plan products to debundle. You can change the. So I think that too many, and this is my point, and I want to ask you your opinion on it. Small companies just keep hitting that wall where when somebody won't buy it for that price, they think lower that price. They never consider debundling and creating a few tiers and properly match effort and cost to selling price by changing and debundling. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. So remember how I mentioned that, the kind of relationship between you and a prospective client, prospective buyer is it's a bit of, it's a bit of a dance. It's a bit of a compromise. This falls under that category. So quickly we go to discounting, and I'm like, resist the urge to discount.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And if you are discounting, remove something from the equation because this is trade-offs, right?
Yes.
Um, you usually can't walk into a restaurant and ask for a filet mignon with potatoes on the side and a martini and all the fixings and everything else for $20. If you only have $20 to spend, it's what's on the menu for $20, right?
Right, right, right.
We all make trade-offs in life, but I
Yes.
think sometimes when we're really trying to bring business in the door and we want those clients, we're like, oh, okay, well, I'll do it for 10% less or I'll do it for 20% less. And what you'll find over time is that that becomes kind of habitual and
Mhm.
your overall profit is now getting really degraded by that discounting. So debundling, I'm stealing that phrase because I've not used it before, but it's mine now. Um,
Okay, you got it.
because you're absolutely right. We tend to, when we approach a a prospective client, when we approach their problem, we tend to want to solve the whole problem. We want everything to be done in a way, in the way that we know it needs to be done, right? But sometimes we have to compromise on that a little bit for our own profitability and sanity and to match whatever their budget is. So, you know, in whenever you're negotiating a rate or a price, yeah, it's I think when you look at your product or service mix, it's kind of going, okay, this is package A, B, and C, right? I want them to take that whole package, but if they can't do that, what pieces can I take out that will, create that compromise so that I'm not discounting and giving away the farm, right?
Yes,
Because
exactly.
yeah, it's
I
it's
use it in my whole career. Because I always had my own company, I've always looked at debundling. In actuality, even my contracts with the SBDC are debundling. And in my private business as a CFO, I got a lot more responsibility and aggravation. So a debundle can be it's not that you're not getting my intelligence, but you're not getting my concern, my carryover, my taking the responsibility on me.
yeah,
Right. So
100%.
that's even like when you debundle to a video from a one-on-one consultation, you are debundling the responsibility. You are debundling the effort to speak. Debundling can you be used, we think about it in products. We have one with not as much features, but I love services because they're intangible. They're able to be changed on a dime. I can debundle something this afternoon.
Right.
Well, why don't you
I
take advantage of our service? Blah, blah, blah. It only involves this. And then, I gotta say this last thing. Then you hear the client, well, I do have a little extra budget after all.
yes,
It
well
like
that
it's taken away.
yeah, it's and you're absolutely right because they start to go, well, I can come up with another couple $100 type of
Yeah,
thing,
they do.
right? I do the same thing because there are situations where I'm working with a business owner in like this type of format, one-on-one to come up with a strategy. And then I have some clients where I'm actually in the business, maybe working with their sales team. And there's a whole lot of different things that happen between one and the other. And so my scope of work, right? Oftentimes we're kind of custom crafting, what makes sense depending on because I have to look at how many hours is it going to take me to do this
Right.
and my dollars per hour, which kind of goes back into that clocking yourself out and
Yep.
out, right? And down a whole nother rabbit
Yep.
hole of the value of your time as a business owner, right? But yeah, I think when, and so here's kind of another good exercise. We talked about that kind of like write ICP at the top of the page, write down all your products or services or write down everything and look at how you've been presenting it like when you're presenting your pricing and then go okay, I have x here. Are there pieces I can take out where the core function is still happening but maybe I don't do that? Like if I'm going to I'm trying to think of a good example, other than us like consulting and stuff like that, but hey, if I'm a gardener and I'm going to come in and, I'm going to trim all the plants, but I'm not going to trim the trees for X amount of dollars, or I'm going to cut the grass and trim all the bushes, but I'm not replanting things and re-landscaping for you for whatever, right? Or I'll do all the cutting, I'll do all the tree trimming, but haul away costs more,
Exactly.
those
Yeah.
types of
Yeah.
things.
In fact, okay, you're gonna have you back on, okay? Because I got to keep going with it. So this is something I just talked to a couple clients about. Not only the debundling, but I want to throw another thought on. And I think, we're getting so many great responses in the chat. We got to have
Oh,
you
I'm
back
so
on.
glad.
We're getting a lot. Okay, I got another one for you guys, and I got one for you, Meegan. And hopefully you always pick up on what I'm trying to talk about. So I have been painfully aware of the DIY market myself, doing all the things I've done. We don't need to get into that, but I'm painfully aware of DIY. But what I had noticed, and I'll show you where this is going, is that I got where I don't want to let go of anything now because of trust. So I want a portion of DIY. So I may want somebody to come out, like I had somebody come out and cut the hole in my house because I didn't want to cut the hole for the window myself. I thought I'd look like, basically a Disney ride, right? But I wanted to do the framing myself, right? So I want to buy a portion. Well, I had a client that sells, he's going to be coming on the show and talk about this a bit, but he sells, let's call it programs.
Mhm.
He was having a problem because people wanted to buy a part of the program and he felt he had to sell them the whole program. And I told him, this is where I'm going. I said, I don't know for sure, but I think we have to make a conscious awareness of the high trend towards the DIY. Not only financial, but people find a level of appreciation and enjoyment out of doing a portion. They also find a bit of comfort out of doing the portion.
Mhm.
And there is now the upcoming generations that are big into having a bit of DIY. However, I also feel as though we've reached a saturation, the noise, where people go on social media or YouTube, especially, and watch so many damn videos. They're exhausted. They don't know what the truth is. They now want DIY with some expert assistance or advice, and they're friggin' willing to pay for it. And suddenly you could be a landscaper who is selling an hour of consultation on the yard, showing them how to dig the plants. You are now off and you are making more money. I think understanding, respecting the DIY, debundling, allowing it to occur. I don't care if you're a product or your service, I think is golden. And I believe that this is the big selling opportunity that exists for all. I know I'm big on this, but do you understand what I'm even saying?
I let's call it facilitated DIY.
I love it. Okay, we got a new word,
We got
debundling.
another one. We got another
Okay, we
one.
got a new, we're going on the
We're
road with this.
we're
Okay,
writing
we're
these
going on the
down,
road.
right? Like get that
Yeah.
on a t-shirt.
Katie,
Facilitated
get that in. Get
DIYer.
these in the chat. Get these in the chat.
I so as you know, I'm someone who does a lot of my own YouTube home construction, and
Right,
it's true. There's past a certain point, unless you've done something on your own, you don't feel comfortable with it. The
right.
flip side of that is I do want ownership of what I'm doing because
Ownership.
if if it's something I want to learn, fully outsourcing it, having someone else do it for me, I'm not going to get the ability to learn. Most of us have to have our hands on something, or how many times have you learned a new computer program, you've watched the training and you go, okay, I just need to go in here and click around because that's how it's going to stay in my brain, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us as human beings are like that. And um, but it and again, this kind of goes back to the noise, right? There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of bad information. Even just in like if home construction is a great example, and I'm sure if anyone on here is does anything in the trades, they will probably be the first to tell you YouTube has gotten so bad in terms of they'll be teaching you how to cut like I can't remember there was one video about electrical and
I was thinking electrical right
it
away.
was so frightening. It was like one, that isn't to code. Two, you will literally light your house on fire at some point.
Yeah.
Like there are
Yeah.
things that there's so much information that technically some of it could be dangerous, right? Now it's
Yes.
most things aren't to that level, but could misinformation or learning how to do something the wrong way could waste a lot of time, cause us a lot of frustration. So I think when it going back to what you were saying about products and services, for someone like me, I'll take myself as an example. There are plenty of times where I work with a business owner and go, all right, we're going to sit down, we're going to define all the things. We're, the ICP, the product mix, the what everything looks like and how we're talking about it, how we're pitching it, what our activity plan needs to be. And then they're the ones executing, right? So it is kind of like facilitated DIY. It's
Yeah.
giving them enough guidance so that they're coming up with their own plan that works for them, that makes sense, that's going to be achievable and profitable, and then going, okay, Megan, I'll check in with you when I need you again, right? Like that, or I'll check in when, based on certain benchmarks or goals. And I think there's a lot of businesses that aren't just, say, consulting or training that fall under that model, even potentially finished products, right? Like,
Yes.
um, let's just say carpentry. I'm going to go in and build the structure, kind of to your point about the window. I'm going to go in and build the structure and you want to stain it yourself or paint it yourself, maybe knock yourself out. Maybe that's a way that you can split. I'm just kind of spitballing, right? I
But
mean,
it's true because like I just did some HVAC in my van and I had a local HVAC person that doesn't do vans and I don't do hoses. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll be in communication with the manufacturer. I'll make sure we get all the parts. I'll take the responsibility. You help me and work alongside me and you charge what you need to. It was a hefty bill, but like you said, I'm paying for his expertise. I paid for 10 hours of probably probably $175 an hour of expertise gladly, because I was able to learn. I have control of it. And he showed up. I had his little list of things. I had, here's what we need to do. And you know what? I couldn't have bought that from a larger company. I had to find an individual entrepreneur that would work with me. I won't do anything in the house without bringing him and about 3 others that'll work with me that way. I do believe that starting to rethink the way we package our product and services based on the way people are desiring to buy, focusing on the fact that I think there is a level of frustration with the amount of information, noise, and misinformation and YouTube videos, but people aren't wanting to go back and purchase without the comfort of involvement, because to be honest, a lot of people and a lot of companies aren't given the service they once did. So they're caught
Right.
between this rock and a hard place. I can't get anybody to do it damn right, and I really don't have the information to do it myself. Oh, look, here's somebody that will work with me, give me their expertise, support, guide me, and encourage me, instead of saying, we don't support it when you do it on your own. That breaks our warranties. Instead of going, well, I'm not taking on the responsibility and here's a contract. I'm just assisting you. Okay, we're in. I think that is where our small businesses can shine, Meegan.
Yep, 100%. You and I have talked about this before. Intellectual property has value,
Yes.
right? Everybody on this call is an expert in what they do. And it's tough because we feel like so many things have become commoditized, right? Like there's a bazillion competitors for everything. There's all this information online, misinformation online. So it feels like so many things have become commoditized. Service is kind of at an all-time low. Accountability feels very low in most
Right.
of our worlds and what we encounter as a buyer, right? So how do you differentiate yourself? Well,
Right.
there's a if you're working directly with the owner of a small business or with a small team, yes, there's a greater level of accountability. Yes, there is a higher level of service. And yes, usually there's a greater level of expertise that I'm going to get to take advantage of as a buyer. And chances are, the value is going to make sense, right? So that really goes into, yes, how you're positioning yourself, how you're positioning your product, how you're selling yourself, right? Because those things do make a difference. And I do think that, like, just this is a blanket statement, but society at large is craving that,
I do too.
because of the noise. There was one other thing you said. I was talking about pitching IP. Oh, bubble gums. I'm stealing your expression, product wise. Um, what's the intro product? Like, sometimes this is something we don't always think about. Sometimes we think of what we do as like one and done. They're only going to buy from me once. Or they have to buy this thing, right?
Right.
That's the thing I sell. You, I think, do a really good job of pointing out, well, do you have a lower cost product that they potentially could buy, or a lower cost service that they could buy? And then if that works out for them, they get to test you, they get to test the relationship, and then maybe they expand and do more, right? Obviously, that definitely works in like the consulting training world, like for me. But I think that's another lens that we don't always apply to all of our businesses, is to kind of sit down and ask ourselves, do I always have to sell them the the box? Or are
Yes.
there pieces of the box? And is one of those pieces like the intro, the gateway product for the box,
Right.
for the rest of
Right.
the box, right?
Right.
Um,
I fully agree. Okay, first of all, we're out of time. We're gonna have to bring you back on. So I'm already gonna tell you I'm booked for August. September, I want you to come back on. I
yes,
want
ma'am.
to continue this conversation, and I want to talk about also managing it. This is my follow-up to what we talked about. And Sadie, if you catch any of these keywords, throw them into the chat. So I'm going to try to make a summary, and let's see if I can pull it off. It's my belief in things we talked about, that things that still matter, I don't care what you're buying, but they still matter. And that is trust. I think trust is at an all time low. And so when you feel like you can sell somebody trust, it's incredibly powerful. I think trust comes in hand with accountability. That's what we're really wanting. We're wanting somebody to have some accountability for what they do. I think there is a high DIY that is now wanted in almost everything. Even if you're buying a product, it may be the installation process. But I think in the DIY DIY, there's an exhaustion of wasted time and bad avenues pursued. So expert advice and information is highly welcomed, especially when it comes with trust and accountability. And then when you can support and encourage somebody in their DIY. So you bring trust, you bring accountability, you give expert advice and information, you give support and encouragement. I don't care if it's a product or a service. I think it's not only time we rethink our business model, I think it's time we start opening our eyes to maybe the world has changed, the consumer has changed, we have changed, and it's not created the end of the world. AI is going to take over our jobs. By the way, if they do, and I can sit around having fun with my squirrels in my backyard all day, I'm fine with that too. But I don't think it's about that. I think it's about time we get to have our power back, one of those big things I say, and really create a world of existence and sales that is one different than we've seen before, that doesn't empower the big corporation, it empowers the us.
100%.
Your closing marks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that it's just like any big period of change, right? AI is creating a huge period of change in everything that we do. And change is scary. And then we're kind of going, okay, well, how do I navigate this? How do I position myself? How's this going to impact my business? And that, it's kind of like going back to the beginning of our conversation where we said, taking the fear out of selling. It's also kind of taking the fear out of change. If we look at this a little bit different, um, small business owners do have a unique opportunity, I think, now. I don't want to say necessarily more than ever, but now for sure, to differentiate themselves.
Yes.
Because I mean, look at the chat, accountability, trust, right? We all feel that in our day-to-day lives. So positioning ourselves as a source of that is going to help us grow our businesses, without a doubt. And just one other thought, somebody said Trojan horse product, like bubblegum intro product. I love that. That is stealing that one too.
Yeah, tell me
Thank
that.
you,
Yeah.
Nadia. Yeah, stealing that one too. But yeah, my closing remark is take a few minutes to sit down and think about some of the things we talked about. I know there's a bazillion other things going on in your day, but think about that ideal client profile and think about that unbundling of products, because that could really help impact your profitability and make some of what you do more profitable. Um, and think about those differentiators, like that. People buy you. They actually
Yeah.
don't buy what you sell, right?
Yeah.
They buy you, the trust, the accountability, the expertise. And it's when we kind of get imposter syndrome running our own businesses and we're doing all those things, like never forget that they're buying you above
I
anything
love that.
else.
I
So
love that. Never forget they're buying you. I love that. Sadie, we got to stop. We got to stop. I could go on forever. I
I
feel
know,
like
but
this
it's so
was such a
good.
I'm sorry.
powerful
Need
session.
another hour.
Yeah, we're getting one in September. Guys, Meegan's going to be back on in September. I promise you.
Can't
So,
wait.
Sadie, thank you for putting Meegan's information in. Guys, please reach out to Meegan. You'll do one-on-one an hour. You'll debundle to do a small consultation, right?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely. That's my
There you go.
Trojan horse product.
Yeah, hey, there you go. There you go. And if you have any questions, Zadie's got my information. You just reach out. She always makes sure I get the email. You want to get in touch with me or anybody else at the SBDC. We got a ton of resources. I have to end this. So Sadie's going to stay later. So everything stays open. You can find out anything about me or Meegan or SBDC from Sadie. And I got to say, Meegan, you're coming back on. I love this conversation. I feel as though we need to take this conversation on the road. This was just a very powerful one. So with that, I got to say goodbye. So thank you to my frequent flyers that are here every week with great information and insight into the chat. If you were new to the show, oh, I'll see you next week. I know I will. I know I will. So with this, I got to say bye, everybody. Thank you for watching Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. See you next week, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Have a great one.
Bye. All righty, guys. We know the drill. I'm going to hang out for a few. Let me know if you need need anything. We had a lot of activity in the chat. Awesome session. I told you guys, I do not lie to you. Okay, so I'm just gonna put Meegan's information in there again. Like I said, I just wanted to, keep it active. We can do a little scrolling there. So if you want to get in touch with Lori, let me put that info there for you. Hold on one second. Do. If you are not yet a client of the SBD, and I highly advise you to do so, remember, this is a no-cost service. Imagine getting Lori as an advisor. We have, I would say experts, business subject matter experts that are top of their field. So do not go, now cost service. Oh, this is going to be someone that's not, no. Like, we only get the best of the best here. So please, sign up. It's your tax dollars at work, and learn, come part of this, I would say, network that we have in the Riri. I'm so excited. Is it Riri? I like saying Riri. Well, no, I mean, right. Amazing session. Okay, so let me get all this fun stuff going for you. I feel empowered. I'm not gonna lie. So let me put in Lori's contact info. I'm gonna put myself on mute because if not, I'm just gonna keep on talking to you guys about what a great session this was. So let me know if you need anything. I'm putting myself on mute. And yes, we are gonna see you guys next week for another wonderful episode of Small Biz Talk. Talk to you soon.